Welcome, everybody. Thank you for coming. So today I will begin with just a little prayer. Om Jnana-timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur-unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I hope today that I will be able to share some things with you that help you in your service to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga, that enliven your practice and lighten your heart. So today's class is called Kicking the Dog While Trying to Make Friends with Its Master. This is not a good idea. We will be discussing from Bhakti Sandarbha, the Anucheta 106, and more specifically 106.6 and 106.7. So the Anucheta, for those who may not know, basically means a section that contains one particular topic, or you could think of it even as a thesis that supports the entire premise of the book. So each Anucheta is broken down into subsections, which are facets of the overall section. It's like an outline. If you've ever done outlines for school, where you have, the big Roman numeral, then the capital letter, then under that is the Arabic number and small letters. So each subpart gives support and proof to the thesis of the entire Anucheta, but with nuanced reflection and from different angles of vision, so that we are led to a more comprehensive and more complete understanding of the topic. So today's principal topic of discussion is that bhakti and worship are meant exclusively for Bhagavan. So this point, Srila Jiva Goswami firmly establishes in like the first 4.5 pages of the Anucheta, but anticipating our dualistic and polarizing brain that results in a tendency to think that because something is exclusive, that whatever is not that is therefore trivial and does not need to be regarded. So Srila Jiva Goswami spends the next 45 pages clarifying how and why the disregard and disrespect of those who might be considered outside of Bhagavan are actually disregard and disrespect of Bhagavan himself. So within that statement, you can there's a hint as to the underlying premise of Jiva Goswami's argument. And I'll give you another hint. Padmanabha Maharaj spoke about it in one of his recent classes on the Brahma Stuti, where Mother Yashoda, who's looking into Krishna's mouth, she sees herself looking into Krishna's mouth, and in that mouth, her looking into his mouth, and endlessly it goes on. So could she differentiate between Krishna within and Krishna without? No, she couldn't. So one could actually say, and be truthful about it, that everything outside of Bhagavan is definitely 100% worthy of our disrespect. Like what? How could one say such a thing? Because there is nothing outside of Sri Bhagavan. All of his forms are all pervading. So it's a few points from Srila Jiva Goswami's clarification that I would like to focus on today. The first one is clarification 6, which is a devotee should not disrespect any living being. And 7, worship devoid of compassion does not yield perfection. So it's during the discussion of universal respect that Sri Jiva is inspired to turn to the teachings of Bhagavan Kapila Dev. Kapila Dev stressed the importance of extending honor to all living beings, from those that are bereft even of life air, like rocks and stones, all the way up to those who have surrendered themselves fully to Bhagavan. So that pretty much includes everyone. To respect them on the basis that their heart is the sitting place of the indwelling Bhagavan. And with this same unity of vision, Kapila Dev brings out an important relationship between experiencing the presence of the divine in Bhagavan's deity form and experiencing the presence of the divine in the living entities. So for my own self, when I first learned the meaning of namaste, I was in college, like 100 years ago. And I was at a talk given by this really beautiful person. His name was Leo Buscaglia. And most of you probably never even heard of him because, like I said, it was like 100 years ago. But he wrote several books, and one of them was called Love, and another was called Born to Love. And he taught a college course called Love 101. So he's kind of into love. So, but he would explain it in not your typical sentimental way. He was all about relating and loving as subject to subject and substance to substance, divinity to divinity. So he defined namaste as, I honor you from where I am my most divine me to where you are your most divine you. And that's probably the first time I had been exposed to the idea that there is even a divine self, what to speak of a most divine self. So Leo, wherever you are, I thank you. By relating to the divine in all beings, this one shift of perspective, I believe, has the power to right all of the ills of the world, at least in our immediate world. And this, my dear brothers and sisters, this will influence how we see the divine in our practice, and it will transform our practice from something that we do into someone who we are. So Lord Kapila Dev reveals, I am ever existent as the supreme immanent self in all living entities. If a mortal being disregards any one of them, Tom, and hence me, yet worships me in my deity form, he makes a mockery of such worship. Like, whoa. That, to me, that an amazing part of this teaching is the phrasing, and hence me, right? Disregards any one of them, and hence me. Like, it's a consequence. If we disregard any living being, the consequence is that we disregard Bhagavan himself. This reminds me of how Narayan and Vaikuntha saw the offense of Jai and Vijay as an offense that he himself committed. The Lord feels so intimately related that what happens to one happens to the other. And this is love. And we don't need to doubt it. Even if we don't feel that intimate connection on our side, we can rest assured that he feels an intimate connection with us. And that is the unconditional love. Therefore, the key to proper respect, to universal regard, is to recognize the relationship with Bhagavan. And it is within that relationship that one can make distinctions without being a separatist. When it comes to the absolute truth, paradoxes, things that usually are exclusive of each other, they find their equilibrium there because of the truth and the beauty of the absolute being everything, being in everything and outside of everything simultaneously. A space is created for distinctions, and the truth of those distinctions, they don't need to lie in separateness as they do in the world of duality, but in the relationship with the absolute truth, Sri Krishna. Like he says, everything rests upon him. Everything rests upon him as pearls are strung on a thread. So just because respect should be given universally, it does not mean that it needs to be homogeneous. It is because of the absolute nature of the supreme truth that the relative truths have any truth at all. So this might sound like a tall order, and it is, to see the divine in all living beings. But we have to bear in mind what Padmanabha Maharaj often warns. When we hear about shoulds and shouldn'ts and ideals, that this does not mean we need to go neurotic and out of fear of doing the wrong thing or fear of what the right thing might be, that we actually retract from engaging, or we go and isolate ourselves in some cave due to over-identifying with our anatas, thinking that this is me, and we get discouraged and enter a whole like negative narrative of self-loathing. Just don't go there. We are not our anartas. We are our anartas as much as we are our successes. And that is not at all. We aren't these things. We don't need to identify with them. Our failings are due to our conditioning and our immaturity as devotees. In the Bhagavatam, it says, one who offers worship to Hari with faith in the deity form alone, but who fails to honor him as present in his devotees or in other living beings, is recognized as a beginning devotee. So the important words here in this verse are recognized as a beginning devotee. So this is there. These things are normal. We're not going to be perfect. It's normal to be a mess. And good grief, growth is a process. It's first we learn what is proper behavior and what is to be avoided and what is to be pursued and why and how. Then we become aware of it in ourselves. We don't run from it. We don't hide it, cover it up, or as Father Richard Rohr says, we don't offer incense to it either. Rather, we engage in our practices even more sincerely, opening ourselves to the process of transformation. Guru Maharaj says, I love this teaching, that the way to get ink from milk is to keep adding milk. Eventually, there will only be milk. The ink will be dispersed. So gradually, through the influence of the self-revealing power of the intrinsic potency, Krishna's presence in all things will be disclosed, and any limitations caused by our current conditioning, limitations of egotism and hatred and envy and jealousy, these will all be removed as we move closer and closer into the land of unlimited affection. I had just the quick vision of our anatas being nothing more than paper boats, and we cast them down a molten stream of lava. Like, what does a paper boat, how can that stand in a molten stream of lava? It's not. It's going to be immediately consumed. And this is the great uniqueness of the path of the mystics, that the goal and the means are the same, and they exist in an ever expanding dynamic dance. Everything will become perfect if we just keep practicing. So although Bhagavan Kapila makes the connection to Krishna's deity form, I was thinking it was also appropriate as well to consider the same to be true about Krishna's Namarupa, if actually not even more so, because if one offends the deity, the shelter of Srinam still remains. Yet if we offend Srinam, then where do we go? Even though the deity form in this age remains an anga of bhakti, Harinam Sankirtan is the primary process for developing love of God in Kali Yuga. So whatever Lord Kapila says about the relationship between deity worship and respecting others is even more so in relationship with Srinam. So we could think of the verse mentioned earlier in this way: I am ever existent as the supreme immanent self in all entities. If a mortal being disregards any one of them, and hence me, yet worships my holy names, he makes a mockery of such worship. In this regard, Sri Gauranga Mahaprabhu also connects giving respect to others to the chanting of Harinam. Krunadapi sunichena tarorapi sahishnuna amanina manadena kirtaniya sada hari. Be humbler than a blade of grass and more generous than the trees. One should not be very proud of his intellect, but should give respect, all respects to others. In this way, one can chant the holy name constantly. So how we see and treat, how we respect all living beings, what to speak of Vaishnavas and Vaishnavas in the same Sampradaya, and Vaishnavas in the same Parivar, in the same Sangha with the same Guru, all with increasing levels of affection. It's directly related to our ability to perceive Krishna as non-different than Srinam. Can we honestly expect that the holy name will feel friendly toward us and that Sri Radha will allow us anywhere near her beloved if we cannot respect those who are around us? As Gaudiyas, we have been given the highest reach of mercy. So it is incumbent upon us to relate with each other in extraordinarily generous ways, in ways more generous than other yugas or other methods of self-realization required. So what is respect? I like words, so I looked at the etymology of it. Respect can be thought of as seeing, spect, again, re. So it means to take a closer look. Don't just pass people by. Take a closer look. And what are we looking for? Are we looking for their faults, for their wrongdoings, their lackings? No, we're looking for their potential, not their past, not their present, but their potentiality of brilliant futures. My husband, excuse me, I'm dying here. my husband, Dulal Chandra, and we came up with a saying that we felt encapsulated the depraved consciousness, and the consciousness devoid of respect and devoid of grace and devoid of the very magnanimity extended to us. And that is to think that the best anyone can ever be is the worst they have ever been. I'll say it again. The best anyone can ever be is the worst they have ever been. Now, this is not a recommendation. This is not how we should think. This is how one thinks if you are devoid of respect. When I hear people, devotees, judging other Vaishnavas now for something they did 7 years, 20, 40 years ago, as if they are that same person now, as if Bhakti Devi is incapable of bringing them back into balance, as if the process that holds the greatest transformational potential, and that is most generously bestowed and freely gifted to the world, that lacks the potency to transform that person's heart. Oh, my friends, we should hope that that is not the case, because if it is, where's our hope? So our hope for receiving mercy lies in our extension of it. We've heard 100,000 times, to give is to receive. So without compassion for others, the fruits of our own practice will be very slow in coming. Mahaprabhu, he squeezed his heart into the holy name, and he drenched with the highest superlative, most complete love. That holy name has flooded into our lives by the grace of Sri Guru. Yet some, perhaps ourselves, even at times, think that there are others who don't deserve it, or because they do things a little differently than us. They read different books, they sing different songs, they stand when we sit and they sit when we stand, and perhaps they didn't get it. Perhaps that sect actually didn't get it. Then what should we do? We should erect walls to protect what has been given to us, as if Bhakti Devi needs our protection. I was just at a place where sectarianism is rampant, and it is so painful to see the flow of bhakti blocked by institutionalization and sectarianism. My God, when I see it, I just want to scream, let her go. Let her flow as freely to others as she flowed to us. Bhakti and bhaktas without borders. Like, we don't have a right or the capability to control her. So any walls that we build to keep bhakti in actually serve or disserve to keep bhakti out. To use the beautiful differences between sanghas, which they're ornaments of bhakti. Differences are ornaments of bhakti. They showcase her exquisite ability to be expressed in such wondrous variety. To use that beauty to divide and to separate us, that I feel is such an affront upon bhakti. So not only do we not have the right to block the flow of bhakti, and in the name of bhakti, like how ridiculous is that? But because of the magnitude of the gift of Sri Mahaprabhu, our responsibility to share that with others, to guard against our own miserliness, and to open channels and avenues to assist the flow of bhakti is reciprocally greater. And that includes breaking down our own walls, our false designations that we assign to ourselves and others, relinquishing our false values and inviting the flood of bhakti that is flowing past our door so that we, can open the door and dip ourselves into when it's convenient. Open the door and invite that flood to inundate the corners of our being and make us worthy of being an instrument. So nothing exists independent of the supreme absolute truth, Sri Krishna. On this basis, all things are worthy of respect due to their being constitutionally related to him. What to speak of those whose heart carry Bhakti Devi herself. So much preparation has led me to just 1/2 hour of class. With this, I want to end with one final teaching from my Guru Maharaj, which is a favorite of mine. While standing in line for mercy, do not demand justice for others. All right. That's the end of that. Does anybody have any corrections? Anything that you would like to add, share, participate? All right.
Say something. Haribol.
Haribol. I have a question.
Uh-oh.
I agree with everything that you're saying, and it's beautiful and it's super inspiring, and it's very well put. But sometimes it's so difficult to know when to. Sometimes I feel a devotee needs to be. I need to correct somebody, for example, and I easily get kind of mental and nervous. Then that, am I now kind of pretending I'm some big person, and is it really my job to say, or should I just respect that this person is going through a phase? And what does it actually mean to respect another person?
Well, the first thing that came to mind is you said, am I thinking myself some big person, some big know-it-all? You'd have to ask yourself, are you? Are you actually thinking that? Or are you thinking of yourself as a servant? Are you thinking that if I share this with someone, if I help them be a better self that they can then offer to their guru and offer in service, that is of value. That's not being a big puffed up person. It's not disrespect. It's actually the greatest respect, because you're willing to put yourself on the line to assist another person in their service. So I think it's the inner world, it's the motivation behind that action that will determine whether it is respect or disrespect. I'm sure that's not a comprehensive answer, but that's what comes.
That's excellent. Thank you. Thank you. That's what I needed to hear.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right. Thank you so much, and make valuable use of your free half hour that you had carved out of your day. Thank you. Haribol.
Hariyo.
Bhaktirasa Devi ki jai.
Jai.